What's up, man? So today I wanted to go over my favorite books of the year. And of course, I don't read enough to stay on the fucking cutting edge of today's latest and greatest authors. So I'm not reading, this isn't a list of all like 2025 books, right? So these are books that I read in 2025. One of them I'm like extraordinarily behind on, probably by a century. But just want to break down some of my favorite stuff that I read this year. The first one is actually a surprise. So it's by Thomas Harris, the author of Silence of the Lambs. It is called Red Dragon, which the movie itself I don't think was that great. I think it had some crazy parts in it, but the book was so good, dude. That book was like it really like nailed the horror aspect of it. It really did a great job building suspense, and like it felt more like the Hannibal TV show, which is like unbelievable. Highly recommend it. I probably keep reading all the Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal Lecter stuff. The next one, actually, I think it's a 2024 book, so I'm close. But it's one of my favorite new authors that I'm familiar with. It's Julia Armfield's Private Rites. Now, it's very monotone. There's not a lot of spikes, not a lot of valleys. It's very like droning and dark and kind of sad, very austere. It's about three sisters. Apparently it's like an analog for King Lear, which I'm not familiar with. I don't know any Shakespeare stuff, but it was just a great book. It's like sort of like quietly apocalyptic in a very non-Fallout / The Roadway. It is really great. Pay attention to everything she writes. She's doing really important stuff. Has a really interesting voice and does not give you any, if all of the answers. Just really respects you as a reader and lets you paint your own picture. I loved it. The next one was Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Great little chronicle of an orphan who finds no home, truly, is an outcast, has a lot of cool, interesting, weird like fight in him, and it's written in the first person. Just talks about like a lot of like the grind of a life where no one really wants you, but they find a few people who will care for them and a few people that grow to love him. And I think when you read that book, there's a huge heart in there that's just coated in a lot of grime. Really well written. I thought it was fantastic. One of those books that I read that I feel like I've seen the cover a lot, and I was just like, you have one of those situations where it's like the Da Vinci Code. You see that cover all the time and you're like, how good could this really be? Anything that becomes really popular and it starts to become ubiquitous, like there's a coin flip. It's either going to be like, like grocery store novel trash, or this could be really good, and this happened to be really good. The next one this is a classic. It's by Leo Tolstoy. It's Anna Karenina, Russian classic literature. Huge book, very slow, but I don't know, man. There's like hundreds of pages that go by that don't advance the story, but really break up the society that they're in and the way the world was constructed and why it's so important that the main characters act and feel the way they do. So I think back, this is 1800, so when you think about the aristocracy of what, I don't know specifically Russia, but the way society was structured, so much of what you were striving for or what you did was sort of laid out for you at birth. So it's interesting that the male main character, he's someone who comes from nobility but does not want to play the games of nobility, doesn't want to go through the politics, and just wants to work the land and be around his people. And I thought that was like very, very interesting in that sense. Like, people look down on him for wanting to work the way he worked and believe the way he believed, but so much of his stoicism and his beliefs were unique at a time when people of that class didn't necessarily always feel that way. And of course, Anna Karenina, like the main woman in this book, changes the game in a lot of ways, because she fights for so long, following all of these societal norms that she has to follow, and it makes her feel so alienated, to the point where like the true climax and the true victory of the book is that she decides to find autonomy and make her own decisions, and really allow herself to follow her heart. You'll find that in the 800 plus pages, and I think it's a really important book. It was really cool to read Tolstoy. There's a lot of old like Russian literature that I would really love to read. Anything like even like Murakami, like any of these older classic authors that are like written in languages that are not in English, that are translated over. I can only read them in the translated English, which I'm sure loses a lot of the poetry and the proficiencies of language, and I really wish I could read them, but reading a translation of this is really great. The next one was another huge one, recommended to me by my friend JJ, with like the highest recommendation. It's Hanya Yanagihara's A Little Life. Dude, this is the saddest book. This main character gets beaten down through their entire life, and they just continue to strive forward. And really, like, the title of the book, A Little Life, really refers to the fact that they put together a nice little life for themselves when really they were counted out. I was going to kind of pair this with Demon Copperhead, but it's written far more eloquently and far more, obviously, like, in a modern kind of style. This would be more of an HBO show, where Copperhead might be more of a Netflix show. It's dark, it's sad, you never get out of the pit. I think it's really fantastic and really shines a light on the way that we treat one another, and shines a light on the importance of friendship and the importance of the people you keep around you being people that you trust, and you know, you should want to share all of yourself with them, because the more you hold back, the more you're doing yourself a disservice. As much as you want to protect those things inside of you, you're not gaining anything by keeping things secretive. So I thought it was a really beautiful book, really special book, really difficult to get through. A lot of trigger warnings in there, but fantastic book. The next one, this one wasn't like the most well-written. It wasn't like, I didn't find this to be a really great piece of literature or anything, but the book is called Rekt, spelled R-E-K-T, by Alex Gonzalez. Awesome book. I think even just conceptually, it was the one that I really wanted to share with friends that I knew. So I would just put it kind of in this sense, like if you came up and you're in my generation and you are familiar with a lot of books, a lot of websites like rotten.com and all those weird like shock violence websites, where you'll see like beheadings and stuff like that. I don't know, just weird car wrecks and cartel violence. This book references so much of that in such an authentic way. It's like an underbelly of the world that you kind of always knew was out there. You kind of always knew your friends were not into, but like were familiar with, or people in school were familiar with, but you know, no one really touches on it. This book dives really far into it, and of course goes deeper into like the addictive nature of violence and how far you're willing to push yourself to the extreme, in terms of like the content you're going to consume and how much the content that you consume controls you. Awesome book, fast read. Wasn't really blown away by it in terms of like, I don't know, like language and stuff, but great concept for a book. I think everyone who's familiar with that kind of stuff should check it out. Good, quote unquote, easy read, just super violent. My favorite book this year is Chris Whitaker's All the Colors of the Dark. Dude, this book, I think this year I talked about The Pit a little bit. I don't usually like want to like binge TV shows, and I usually don't read at like a maniac clip. So the way I read is every morning, if I don't have to go into work super early, I will give myself an hour and I will read 50 pages. 50 pages at minimum every day that I'm not working super early. This book made me just do nothing but read. I locked in. I wanted to know more. I always wanted to know what the story was. It's like, I don't want to say romantic because that means a very different thing now, but it is like very heartfelt. The mystery within it is really great. It does a lot of the true crime stuff really well. It does a lot of the relationships between the characters really well. You really like hurt for each and every one of these characters. I don't want to give too much away because I think I picked this one up kind of with no knowledge of what it was going to be, and I really loved it, and I think anyone could pick this book up and love it. #1 book of the year for me by far. Just a really well-written novel, very terse, very minimalist, a little bit of that, like, it's not really, but like that Chuck Palahniuk, like, very dicey kind of writing, but in a more like modern, less like edgy kind of way. Dude, great book. Thanks for hanging, man. Curious to know what you're reading. If you need the time to read, you'll find it, man. That's the one thing I always find people who want to read more. Just, you have to cut the time out. The time's not going to go looking for you. Anyway, later. Bye.